Join me today as we talk about X-Men 97, episodes 5 and 6. This is the Geek Cabal channel. My name is Bob, and today we're going to be talking about episodes 5 and 6 of X-Men 97 on Disney+. I have a very lengthy video I recorded on episode 5, but I didn't get it recorded till late last week, and other videos got in the way. So I figured I'd try to just mash these two together and hopefully not have some like 45-minute long catastrophe again. So here goes. Non-spoilery stuff. Episode 5 is pure dynamite. Somehow at the halfway mark, a Disney Plus show is still going strong. Episode 6 answers some questions I've been having and is setting up for I'm going to take a stab at where I think the finale is going. Episode 6 features, well, both episodes feature all kinds of cameos. So the brief plot outline without major spoilers. Episode 5, Genosha is going to be admitted to the UN. Some of the X-Men, namely Magneto, Rogue, and Gambit, go to Genosha, and the council there on Genosha has decided that they want Magneto to be the Chancellor, and he will only accept in the case that Rogue joins him. Some things happen. Gambit gets very jealous and upset, and rightfully so. And then back at the mansion, the X-Men are being interviewed by, I believe it's Trish Tilby, and trying to, as they put it, humanize the X-Men. Jean is trying to reassert control over her powers and figure out which of her memories are actually hers and which happened to Madeline. And yeah, so that's the broad strokes of episode 5. Then the broad strokes of episodes... Oh, and episode 5 does not continue the storyline, the B storyline of episode 4, as far as Storm trying to get her powers back. Episode 6 is the continuation of that storyline, as well as some goings-on out in space that I will get to in the spoiler section. So, like I said, episode 5 was like pure dynamite. Episode 6, important things happen, but it's a much slower episode, and I think it's a lot more setting up for what's to come. So that's about all I can say before I really get into spoilers. So, the spoilers for episode 5. I mentioned the plot, and what ends up happening is there's a gala of sorts. Well, first, we get some background on the Rogue Magneto situation. We find out that way back whenever Rogue was with the Brotherhood, well, Mystique and some of her Brotherhood goons, which I guess they were the Brotherhood, Mystique took her to Magneto, and Magneto, tried to help her. He found out that he could actually touch her because his magnetic powers allowed that. And then he also tried to elaborate, that he had all kinds of ideas for mutant kind, to actually have their own literature and music and poetry and art and things like that. You see this vast library that he has, and you see him using his magnetic, because Rogue's there posing, and he's using his magnetic powers to control the paintbrushes to paint a picture of her and everything. And she's telling Gambit all this, but then she tells him that he also was just too full of rage, and so she left. That's why she joined the X-Men. But now maybe she can actually help. And she tries to explain to Gambit, that she has to at least consider this chance where she'll actually be able to touch someone that she has feelings for. It's not that she doesn't care for Gambit, it's that she literally can't touch him without trying to kill him. And, intimacy is a thing with people, mutant or not. So, it sucks, but it's something that she at least has to explore for her own sake. And I think Gambit gets that by his reaction. You know, he doesn't like it, but he's pretty sure Magneto's going to screw her over at some point, and he's probably right. Or would be if certain other things didn't happen before the end of the episode. So they all go down to the ball, and Gambit's there, Magneto's there, and then Rogue comes in, and this song from Ace of Base begins playing, Happy Nation, which I believe that's a first for the X-Men series, is an actual real-world song playing. But it's interesting because, one, it's an actual 90s song, and at first I thought they just like were really good at emulating 90s music, but the second time I watched it, I was like, no, this is a little too good. And so I looked it up, and it's an Ace of Base song. And along with that, I think the lyrics are also somewhat relevant. You should look them up. But Madeline Pryor is also there. Now, then she goes outside. She gets like a psychic vision of some things she's already seen, and her nose is bleeding. She goes outside, and then Cable shows up and is telling everyone, turn off the music. He's coming, and he finds Madeline Pryor. And she's like, Cable, what are you doing here? Then she looks into his eyes, and she realizes, this is when she pieces together that Cable is her son. And she's like, you made it. But then his computer like auto body slides him out of there, and as he's disappearing, he's like, I'm sorry, Mom. And she's like, sorry for what? And then this giant green glow envelops her, and a giant beam of energy smashes into her and the whole building and everything. And she was killed. And then you also see that Sebastian Shaw is dead. Callisto of the Morlocks is dead. Moira McTaggart's dead. I think maybe Beak was dead. And then you see Banshee and Marrow get vaporized. And there's a gigantic master mold monstrosity that has the tri-heads, kind of like the Tri-Sentinel, but it's not the Tri-Sentinel. And its body is a lot more like insectoid in appearance, but on its underside, it just is releasing all kinds of Sentinels out to go fight and kill everybody. And this was taken from the artwork for the E for Extinction storyline, where Cassandra Nova unleashed this thing onto Genosha and killed tens of millions of mutants. I don't think it's going to be Cassandra Nova here, and I'll get to my rationale here in a minute. So, Magneto and everyone else try to save as many people as they can. Magneto realizes the Morlocks are trapped underneath this thing, and he's just like, I promised them they'd be safe. Well, his exact words are, a promise was made, but that's what he's talking about. So he and Gambit go to try to get them out, and Magneto ends up fighting the Sentinel himself. And he has a flashback. You see a bunch of his other dead friends, and the last bit is from the Holocaust. So yet again, the show is kind of dancing around the issue, but if you know what to look for, you see what they're talking about. And he's just kind of like they'll be avenged, and starts just lashing out the Sentinel, somewhat ineffectually. And finally, he shows up. The Morlocks are out there, and he's trying to protect them under this magnetic field. Rogue is going to go try to help somehow. Gambit tries to stop her. Then Magneto uses his powers and wraps the two of them up in a bunch of metal. Then makes like a metal sphere around him. And Gambit's trying to tell her that he's trying to protect them. And if I didn't have the captions on, I wouldn't know what Magneto says at this point. But he looks down at Leech and tells him in German, "Don't be afraid." And that's when his powers can no longer keep up with the Sentinel, and they just get vaporized. So the Morlocks and Magneto get toasted right there. Rogue goes off in a berserker fury and is going to go after the Sentinel, and Gambit doesn't want to see her dead too, so he uses powers to charge up a motorcycle and throw it at her and blow her out of the way. Then the Sentinel starts going towards the rooftop full of mutants, and Gambit gets its attention, comes flying in at it. Right as he's getting to it, it fires out like a metal tentacle and stabs him in the side. And then it's like, mutant threat eliminated, and diverts its attention again. And Gambit kind of smiles, and he's like, the name's Gambit, mon ami. And he grabs the thing that's stuck inside of him and starts charging it, which ends up charging up the entire Sentinel. He's like, remember it. And kaboom, the whole thing explodes. And then it cuts back to the mansion, and you see the reports coming out of Genosha. The X-Men are seeing them, and they're devastated by what they're seeing, obviously. And then it cuts back, and there's just a crater with Rogue holding Gambit, and she's just like, I can't feel you anymore, because he's dead. And it ends with very somber music over the end credits. Then there was also a subplot involving Cyclops and Jean having serious relationship issues, because Jean's trying to figure out what memories are hers, which ones aren't. Cyclops has to deal with the fact that he was in love with her clone, has a kid with her clone, and is now like psychically talking to her clone, because they were together for who knows how long and have a kid together. Like, I think Jean's reaction is a little bit of an overreaction here. Like, Cyclops is the one in the weird position. But anyway. So yeah, just bad news all the way around there. Many main characters die. Now, given Cable's presence, I think time travel shenanigans are going to be invoked at some point, but we'll see. And then we get on to episode 6, which is the second half of Storm regaining her powers and overcoming the adversary. And she does. She realizes that, like, somehow she was stopping herself from regaining her powers. And by the way, we're still in spoiler territory here. So Forge got attacked by the adversary. There's some fungus or cactus that she needs to go get. Forge busts out some magic and fights the adversary at one point. And I think she kind of forgives Forge. She says she loves him, and she gets her black costume that looks a lot like what she would have had in the beginning of the Uncanny X-Men. Well, the beginning of the Chris Claremont run. So she gets her powers back, and then at the end there, she turns on the TV and sees what's happened in Genosha. And this is intermixed with goings-on out in space. The Kree and the Shi'ar are at war with each other. We get to see Ronan the Accuser. Excuse me. The Shi'ar Imperial Guard beating the crap out of the Kree. And, yeah, get to see Deathbird in action. And then we see that Professor Xavier is still alive. So the X-Men are basically just kind of acting like he's dead. Which means they must have put on some kind of public performance of him dying, because everyone saw him get shot. But in the episode that this happened, Morph pretended to be him and went on TV and said that he was okay. So he had to have gone back on TV and said he's not okay. So that had to have happened. He's going to marry Lilandra, the Empress of the Shi'ar Empire. And the council's like, oh, you can't marry this Terran. And Deathbird's like, well, I'm invoking such and such a right. And if you're going to marry him, then he has to renounce Earth and the X-Men. Even going so far as to have it all psychically expunged from his mind. And they're just like, this is absurd. Like, what the hell are you talking about? But, Lilandra has just about got him convinced to go along with it. And then, like, they're in the middle of doing it, and Deathbird shows up, and she's like, no, everything, renounce it all. Lilandra's like, all right, I've had enough of this. Gladiator, arrest her. And the fight ensues, and Xavier's finally like, all right, super powerful psychic, time to start using my powers. Brings everyone into the astral plane, makes it look like a classroom with him up there as the professor. And basically tries to explain to them that their empire kind of sucks and is built entirely on subjugation instead of assimilation. And it should be the other way around, and they'd become a stronger force for it. So, and that he has no interest in, ruling from Earth or anything at all like that. And he just about has them all convinced, but then the psychic wave of what happened on Earth hits him. He sees that Gambit's dead, the X-Men have been attacked, and, he's like, Lilandra, I have to go back, my worst nightmares come true. I have to go back to the X-Men. She's like, oh, well, we've got the council on the ropes, like they're about to, they're going to agree. And he's like, I ain't got time for this. My students need me. I've got to go. And that's where the episode ends. Well, then we see Bolivar Trask on the run. And he's like, I gave you my DNA so you could activate the Sentinels. Like, what more do you want from me? Then you hear the laugh, and then you see the red eyes and the diamond, and you realize he's talking to Mr. Sinister. So, Mr. Sinister might have sent the giant sentinel to Genosha. Maybe. I still believe it's Bastion because of some other clues in the show. But could have been Mr. Sinister to make this some kind of like weird version of the fall of, not the fall of the mutants, the mutant massacre. And because, as we learned from the original series, you know, they do kind of take bits and pieces of certain existing storylines and kind of mash them together. So, you know, we'll see where that's all going. But yeah, it's 4 episodes left. So my thoughts are it's going to be Xavier's going to come back. It's going to see what happened. The world's going to be really surprised that Xavier's still alive. And that's going to lead to a shift against the mutants and probably more fights with the Sentinels, probably including Nimrod this time. Because the intro keeps changing, and this time it included Nimrod. So, also a possible clue that Bastion's going to be involved because he is Nimrod that's been combined with Master Mold and sent through the Siege Perilous. So, we'll see what happens. But so far, this show is excellent. Can't recommend it highly enough. You should check it out. Let me know what you think down there in the comments. If you've seen it, you've been keeping up, not keeping up, you know, whatever, let me know. But anyway, like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It's YouTube. But remember, welcome to the X-Men. Hope you survived the experience, because several of them just didn't.